That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over the arid expanse of Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the training grounds. Dust swirled in lazy eddies as the K-9 unit assembled at dawn, their boots thudding in unison against the packed earth. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at the front, her posture ramrod straight, the weight of her gear a familiar anchor. At her side, Rex, her German shepherd partner, sat alert, his ears pricked forward, black fur gleaming under the first light. The air carried the sharp tang of dew on canvas tents and the faint, acrid bite of gun oil from the armory nearby. "Unit, attention!" barked Captain Harlan Reed, the handler team's commanding officer. His voice cut through the quiet like a blade, echoing off the distant barracks. The 12 handlers snapped to, salutes rising in a crisp wave. Eleanor's hand met her brow without hesitation, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the pines met the sky. Rex didn't flinch. He'd been through this ritual 100 times, his loyalty as unyielding as the chain of command that bound them all. Reed paced the line, his boots kicking up small puffs of dirt. A veteran of 2 deployments, he moved with the deliberate economy of a man who'd seen too many variables in the field. Today's exercise: urban search and rescue simulation, rubble clearance in contested zones. You know the drill: efficiency, precision, no loose ends. Our K-9s lead, we follow, dismissed to stations. Elena gave Rex a subtle hand signal, and he rose fluidly, trotting beside her as they moved to the mock village site, constructed from concrete slabs, twisted rebar, and shipping containers painted to mimic blast damage. It sprawled across the field like the aftermath of an IED strike. The other teams fanned out. Staff Sergeant Malik Torres with his Belgian Malinois, Luna, sniffing the perimeter. Corporal Jenna Hale and her Labrador, Scout, marking entry points with chalk. The hum of a distant Black Hawk warmed up on the helipad, its rotors slicing the air in slow, testing spins. Elena knelt beside Rex, running her gloved hand along his flank. His muscles tensed under her touch, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged in sweat and shadow. They'd been paired 3 years ago, after her last handler rotation in Afghanistan. Rex had saved her life once, alerting to a hidden cache of explosives in a mountain pass. Now, in training, he was her extension, eyes and nose where human senses failed. "Easy, boy," she murmured, her voice low, professional. No pet names, that was the rule. Affection showed in actions, not words. The exercise began with a sharp whistle from Reed. Handlers deployed, K-9s weaving through the debris with leashes taut. Rex moved ahead, nose low to the ground, his tail a steady flag. Elena followed, her M4 slung across her chest, scanning for simulated threats. Radio chatter crackled in her earpiece. "Team Alpha, clear left flank. Luna signals possible void under slab 3. The scent of crushed stone and damp wood filled the air, mingling with the earthy musk of the dogs at work. Halfway through, the scenario shifted. An instructor's voice boomed over the speakers. "Incoming, hostile fire, secure the site, eliminate witnesses." It was standard protocol, testing response under pressure, but as Elena crested a pile of rubble, Rex froze, hackles rising. He pawed at a crevice, whining low, a signal Elena knew too well. Not a prop, something real. She signaled halt, her heart rate steady despite the adrenaline. "Rex, sit." He obeyed, but his eyes stayed locked on the gap. "Vasquez, report," Reed's voice demanded over the comms. "Possible anomaly, sir. Rex has a hit." She kept her tone even, gloved hands parting the debris carefully. The other teams paused, the exercise grinding to a halt. Dust settled around them, the only sound Rex's measured breaths. Elena's fingers brushed something soft amid the rocks, a child's shoe, Small and scuffed, half buried like an afterthought, her stomach tightened. This wasn't part of the sim. Fort Bragg wasn't supposed to have civilian relics. The site had been cleared months ago. Reed approached, his face hardening as he saw it. "Bag it! We'll log it as foreign object debris." But his eyes flicked to the horizon, where a Humvee pulled up unannounced. From it stepped Major General Elias Thorne, uninvited and out of uniform protocol for a routine drill. Thorne's presence alone shifted the air. Thicker, charged. A 3-star with a reputation for iron-fisted ops, he'd just returned from a classified briefing in D.C. Whispers among the ranks said he was pushing for streamlined SAR protocols, cutting corners on post-mission sweeps to maintain operational tempo. "Captain Reed," Thorne said, his voice gravel over steel. He didn't salute. Rank spoke for itself. "I'm observing. Continue." But his gaze lingered on the shoe in Elena's hand, then on Rex, who growled softly, unprompted. The general's eyes narrowed. "Control that animal, Sergeant." Elena clipped Rex's leash shorter. Her jaw set. "He's trained to detect, sir. This isn't sim material." Thorne stepped closer, the scent of his aftershave cutting through the dust. "In the field, we don't question fines. We clear and move. No witnesses left behind. Understood?" His words hung, laced with implication. The teams exchanged glances, the exercise forgotten. Reed cleared his throat. "Sir, with respect, protocol requires documentation." Thorne's smile was thin. "Protocol bends to necessity, Captain. Bag it and bury the report, or do I need to make this an order?" Elena felt Rex press against her leg, his warmth a steady pulse amid the rising tension. The shoe in her hand felt heavier than it should, a small artifact whispering of oversights. Or worse. The general's command echoed in her mind. But Rex's nose had found truth where orders blurred. As the unit stood frozen, the line between duty and doubt sharpened, and Elena wondered if this was the moment the chain would snap. The wind picked up, carrying the faint whine of the Black Hawk's engines. Thorne turned away, but not before his eyes met Elena's, cold, appraising. She saluted, mechanical, while inside the dilemma took root. Obey, and the shoe vanished. Defy, and the rubble might bury her career. Rex whined again, as if sensing the fracture ahead. Elena clipped the baggie shut, the child's shoe sealed inside like a secret too fragile for the open air. Her fingers, still dusted with grit from the rubble, trembled slightly as she tucked it into her vest pocket. Rex remained at her side, his flank brushing her knee, a silent sentinel amid the stalled exercise. The other handlers hovered at a respectful distance, their K9s on short leads, ears cocked toward the unfolding exchange. Captain Reed's face was a mask of controlled neutrality, but his eyes betrayed the calculation of a man navigating minefields. "General, if I may," Reed said, stepping forward with measured precision. His boots crunched on the loose gravel, the sound amplified in the sudden hush. "The site's been certified clear. This could indicate a protocol breach in the prep phase. We should route it through the safety officer for review." Thorne's gaze shifted from Elena to Reed, appraising, unyielding. The general's uniform, though casual for the field, carried the crisp lines of authority, starched collar, polished boots that gleamed against the ochre soil. The wind tugged at his jacket, carrying the distant rumble of a supply truck on the access road. "Review? Captain? We're not running a museum. Operational tempo demands we don't dwell on anomalies. Log it as training debris and resume. That's the chain speaking." Elena felt the weight of the pocket against her chest, the faint outline of the shoe pressing like an accusation. Rex shifted, his nose twitching toward Thorne, a low rumble building in his throat before she quieted him with a firm hand on his collar. The dog's instincts mirrored her own unease. Something off, buried under layers of command. She'd seen it before, in the Hindu Kush, where overlooked signs led to ambushes. But here, on home soil, the stakes felt different. Not lives in the balance, but the integrity of the unit itself. The teams dispersed on Reed's nod, voices low as they reset positions. Luna pawed at a nearby slab, her handler Torres murmuring commands in a steady cadence. Scout whined softly, sensing the disruption rippling through the pack. Elena led Rex back to their sector, the mock village's shadows lengthening as the sun climbed. The air grew warmer, the scent of sun-baked concrete mixing with the metallic tang of chain-link fencing. She replayed Thorne's words. "No witnesses left behind." It echoed like a field order, but twisted, implying erasure, not protection. By midday, the exercise wrapped under a veil of forced normalcy. Debrief in the tactical tent, canvas walls flapping gently, folding chairs arranged in ranks, the hum of a portable generator underscoring the captain's recap. Reed stood at the whiteboard, marker squeaking as he outlined hits and clearances. "Vasquez, your alert was solid." Rex flagged it clean. His eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of solidarity. Elena nodded, her report concise. "Negative for Simprops, sir. Organic material confirmed." She didn't mention the shoe's details, the worn sole, the tiny buckle suggesting a child's foot, no more than 5 or 6 years old. The tent smelled of stale coffee and sweat-dampened gear, the handlers leaning forward, notebooks open. Thorne had lingered outside during the session, his Humvee idling with a low growl. Now, as the group broke, he entered unannounced, the flap parting with a snap. "Captain, a word on that find." His voice drew the room to attention, chairs scraping back. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Rex, leashed nearby, lifted his head, alert. Reed gestured to a side table, maps and logs spread out. "Sir, we've isolated it. Likely a remnant from civilian access before lockdown." Thorne's fingers drummed the edge of the table, a rhythmic tap against the laminated surface. "Remnant or not, it halts nothing. I've got brass breathing down my neck for efficiency metrics. One loose thread, and the whole op unravels." He turned to Elena, his stare direct. "Sergeant, your dog's nose is gold. But in the field we prioritize the mission. Bag it, forget it. Or do you intend to chase ghosts on base time?" The room stilled, the weight of his implication settling like dust after a convoy. Torres shifted in his seat, Luna's tags jingling softly. Hale's hand rested on Scout's head, a subtle anchor. Eleanor stood, her posture impeccable, the pocket's burden a hidden fire. "With respect, sir, Protocol 7-12 mandates documentation of all anomalies. Rex's alert could point to site integrity issues. Ignoring it risks the unit." Thorne's laugh was short, devoid of humor, echoing off the canvas. "Protocol, Sergeant? I've written protocols that saved lives by cutting red tape. You want to play by the book? Fine, but remember the book gets rewritten by those who deliver results." He leaned in, voice lowering to a gravel whisper meant for her ears. "No witnesses. Clear the slate or find yourself reassigned to kennel duty." As he exited, the flap swung shut behind him, the engine of his Humvee revving to life. Reed exhaled slowly, rubbing his jaw. "Vasquez, stand down for now. I'll escalate through channels." But his tone carried the fatigue of a man who'd pushed against higher ranks before. Elena unclipped Rex's leash, leading him out into the afternoon glare. The training ground stretched empty now, the rubble site cordoned with yellow tape fluttering in the breeze. She knelt by a water bowl, filling it from her canteen, the cool splash grounding her. Rex lapped steadily, his tongue rasping against the metal. She pulled the baggie from her pocket, holding it up to the light. The shoe's leather had cracked from exposure, a small tragedy unearthed. That evening, in the handler's barracks, the air thick with the scent of boot polish and damp towels from the showers, Elena sat on her bunk, Rex curled at her feet. The room buzzed with subdued chatter, Torres recounting a past op, Hale checking Scout's paws for thorns. Elena's mind raced through regs, Article 92, failure to obey, the SAR manual's emphasis on thorough sweeps. Thorne's order clashed with it all, a directive veiled as efficiency, but reeking of cover-up. She logged the find in her personal notebook, the pen scratching softly in the dim lamplight. Rex's head rested on her boot, his breathing even, trusting. The bond between them was unspoken law. He followed her lead, she his senses. If she buried this, what else would she ignore? The general's words gnawed, no witnesses, but the shoe was one, a silent cry from the past. Across the base, the mess hall lights glowed against the twilight. Soldiers queuing for chow under the floodlights. Elena rose, clipping Rex's lead. A walk to clear her head, she told herself, but her steps veered toward the admin building. The chain of command loomed, rigid as the pines silhouetted against the stars. One report filed, and the ripples would spread. Investigation, questions, perhaps the truth of how that shoe got there. Defy, and she'd stand alone. Her career the rubble. Rex tugged gently, nose to the wind, as if urging her forward. The night's chill settled, carrying the faint echo of distant drills. In the quiet, Eleanor's resolve hardened, the dilemma no longer abstract. Duty pulled one way, conscience the other, and Rex's steady presence the tether holding her steady. Tomorrow, the test would sharpen, orders versus the evidence in her hand. The admin building loomed at the edge of the quad, its brick facade lit by sodium lamps that cast a sterile glow over the dew-kissed grass. Eleanor's boots clipped softly against the pavement, the rhythm syncing with Rex's paws padding beside her. The base had quieted for the night, only the occasional hum of a generator or the distant bark of another K9 broke the hush. She paused at the entrance, hand on the door, the baggie crinkling in her pocket like a whispered confession. Filing the report now meant bypassing Reed, going straight to the safety officer. Protocol allowed it for imminent hazards, but Thorne's shadow made every step feel like crossing a tripwire. Inside, the lobby smelled of linoleum polish and cooling coffee from the day shift. A lone specialist manned the desk, his uniform sleeves rolled to the elbows, eyes lifting from a stack of forms. Sergeant Vasquez, late hours? Logging an anomaly from today's drill specialist. Need access to the secure terminal. Her voice stayed level, the words clipped as per training. Rex sat at her heel, his gaze sweeping the room, alert but composed. The specialist nodded, sliding a keycard across the counter. Terminal 3's free. Sign out when done. He didn't pry. Discretion was the air they breathed in admin. The hallway echoed with their steps, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Elena swiped the card, the door to the records room hissing open. Rows of terminals glowed in the dim space, screensavers flickering with unit insignias. She settled at one, Rex curling under the desk, his warmth against her ankle a grounding force. Logging in, her fingers flew over the keys, incident ID, timestamp, description, organic anomaly detected by K9 during USR sim, item, child's footwear, approx, size 10-12, condition weathered, location, Sector 4, Mock Village site. She attached a photo snapped earlier on her secure phone, the shoe's details sharp under the flash. Faded blue canvas, a frayed lace loop. No blood, no drama, just quiet evidence of intrusion. The system prompted for chain of custody notes. She hesitated, cursor blinking. Routing to Reed would loop back to Thorne's influence. Direct to the Provost Marshal. That escalated it, painting her as insubordinate. Rex whined softly, nudging her calf. She glanced down, meeting his steady brown eyes. In the field, he'd trusted her judgment over handlers' shouts. Now the reverse held. She hit submit, routing to the safety office with a CC to internal affairs. The confirmation chime felt final, a soft ping in the empty room. Back in the barracks, the weight lifted slightly, but sleep evaded her. Rex paced the narrow space between bunks, his nails clicking on the tile. The room's other occupants stirred, Torres snoring lightly, Hale murmuring to Scout in her sleep. Eleanor lay on her back, staring at the acoustic ceiling tiles, the day's tension coiling in her chest. Thorne's order replayed, "No witnesses." It wasn't just about the shoe. It hinted at deeper oversights, perhaps a civilian breach during site prep, or worse, a cover for lax security under his watch. Fort Bragg's training areas were fortified, but accidents happened. Ignoring it could endanger future ops, lives hanging on unheeded alerts. Dawn broke with the reveille bugle, its notes piercing the thin walls. Elena rose early, harnessing Rex for the morning run. The air was crisp, pine-scented, as they jogged the perimeter trail, her breath sinking with his trot. By the time they reached the kennels, the unit was assembling for PT, push-ups in formation, the slap of hands on earth punctuating sergeants' counts. Captain Reed pulled her aside near the water station, his face etched with overnight strain. "Vasquez, word from on high. General Thorne's called a full halt on the sim site. No access until his review." He kept his voice low, handing her a canteen, the metal cool against her palm. She nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Sir, I logged the find last night. Safety office has it." Reed's eyes sharpened, a flicker of approval mixed with caution. "Bold move, but brace. Thorne doesn't like loose logs. He's convening a board at Euro 900. Your input's required." The kennel block smelled of hay and disinfectant. Rex's domain, a row of chain-link runs. As she brushed him down, the other handlers filtered in, chatter subdued. Torres leaned on the fence, Luna nosing his hand. "Heard about the general's freeze. Shoe got under his skin." "Protocol," Elena replied, keeping it neutral, her currycomb gliding over Rex's coat in steady strokes. The dog's tail thumped once, sensing the undercurrent. By 08:30, the conference room in headquarters buzzed with low voices. Polished oak table, flags flanking the head. American, Army, Special Forces. Thorne sat at the far end, flanked by two colonels, his posture commanding even-seated. Reed entered with the handler's reps. Elena stood at attention in the back, Rex leashed tightly, his presence a quiet statement. "Be seated," Thorne ordered, his gravel tone filling the space. Papers shuffled, the scent of fresh print mixing with the room's faint mustiness. "This anomaly disrupts efficiency. Sergeant Vasquez, your report claims site compromise. Explain." Elena stepped forward, saluting crisply. "Sir, Rex detected non-SIM material during the exercise. The item suggests prior unauthorized access. Per Reg 38510, all hazards require documentation to ensure unit safety." Thorne's fingers steepled, eyes unblinking. "Safety or stirring ghosts? The site's certified. Your dog's a fine asset, but overreach invites scrutiny." He slid a folder across. Preliminary log showing the area cleared 6 months prior, signed by his adjutant. Bury it, or it buries careers. The room tensed, a colonel shifting papers. Reed interjected, voice steady. "General, if there's a breach, it affects certification. We can't risk it in live ops." Thorne's gaze swept the table, landing on Elena. "Dismissed. But, Sergeant, think on loyalty, to the mission, not the myth." As they filed out, his words lingered, a veiled threat amid the creak of chairs. Outside, under the overcast sky, the wind whipped dust across the quad. Elena unclipped Rex, letting him stretch. The board had exposed the fracture, Thorne's push for speed clashing with evidence. Whispers among the handlers grew. Was the shoe from a lost civilian? A training mishap swept under? Her log had made it public. Witnesses now the system itself. That afternoon, as rain pattered on the tactical tent's roof, Reed pulled her into a side briefing. Maps unrolled, the shoe's photo pinned. Internal Affairs pinged back. They're auditing the site's history. Thorne's fuming, called it a witch hunt. Elena traced the grid lines, Rex at her feet, nose to the damp canvas. Sir, if it's a cover, the unit pays. Rex doesn't lie. Reed nodded, the rain's rhythm underscoring his resolve. Then we stand, but prepare for pushback. The dilemma crested, conscience demanding voice, where orders silenced. As thunder rumbled distant, Elena felt the shift, defiance no longer solitary, the chain bending under collective weight. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The rain had eased to a fine mist by mid-afternoon, leaving the quad slick and reflective under the grey sky. Elena moved through the handler's routine with mechanical precision, her boots leaving faint imprints on the wet concrete as she led Rex to the obedience yard. The air hung heavy with the scent of sodden earth and pine needles, the distant crackle of radio traffic from the command post underscoring the base's steady pulse. Other teams drilled nearby, Torres running Luna through scent trails, her barks sharp against the damp, Hale and Scout practicing recalls, the Labrador's wet fur gleaming as he bounded back on command. Elena's mind, though, replayed the boardroom exchange. Thorne's parting words a low undercurrent, loyalty to the mission, not the myth. She signaled Rex into a downstay, his body flattening to the grass in fluid obedience, eyes locked on her face. The bond between them was a quiet constant, forged in countless hours of drills, where his alerts had become her instincts. But today, as she paced the perimeter, clipping a training vest in place, a Humvee rolled up to the yard's edge, its tires hissing on the pavement. 2 military police officers disembarked, their rain ponchos dripping, faces set in the neutral mask of procedure. Captain Reed followed on foot, his stride purposeful, expression unreadable. "Sergeant Vasquez," one MP said, saluting briskly. "Provost Marshal's office, we need you and your K9 for a site re-inspection. Immediate." Elena returned the salute, her hand steady. "Understood. Rex up." The dog rose without hesitation, shaking off droplets from his coat, the motion sending a faint spray into the air. Reed met her gaze, nodding once, a silent briefing in the chain's language. As they loaded into the Humvee, the engine's rumble vibrated through the seats, the wipers sweeping arcs across the windshield. No one spoke. Questions waited for official channels. The mock village site was cordoned tighter now, yellow tape strung between stakes and flanked by floodlights that cut through the mist like search beams. A forensics team from Internal Affairs milled about, gloved hands sifting debris, cameras flashing in staccato bursts. The air smelled of wet stone and disturbed soil, the rubble's jagged edges softened by the rain. Thorne stood at the periphery, arms crossed, his senior aide murmuring into a radio. His eyes tracked Elena's approach, cold and assessing, as if measuring the fracture she'd widened. "Briefing first," the lead MP, a lieutenant with a clipped southern drawl, directed. They gathered under a pop-up awning, canvas snapping in the breeze. Reed outlined the morning's halt, his voice even. "General's order suspended access pending audit." Vasquez's log triggered the review, potential security lapse in site certification. Thorne interjected, stepping into the circle, his boots planted firm on the muddy ground. "Lapse! This is overreach on a training artifact." His tone carried the weight of command, drawing nods from the colonels nearby. The forensics tech, a wiry staff sergeant, held up a tablet, its screen glowing with Elena's photo of the shoe. "Artifact, sir? Preliminary analysis. Synthetic fibers match civilian wear circa 2018. No base inventory match. Suggests external deposit." The words landed like a spent round, heavy and final. Murmurs rippled through the group, handlers from adjacent units pausing their drills, eyes drawn to the scene. Torres wiped rain from his brow. Luna at his side, her ears perked toward the tension. Hale stood with Scout, her posture rigid as if bracing for fallout. Elena felt the shift, the private dilemma spilling into view, witnesses multiplying under the open sky. "External?" Thorne's voice sharpened, gravel edging steel. He turned to Elena, the awning's shadow carving lines across his face. "Sergeant, your initiative has halted operations for what? A child's cast-off? Explain how this serves the unit." She stood at attention, Rex pressing close, his warmth cutting the chill. "Sir, Rex's detection followed protocol. The item indicates possible unauthorized access, compromising site safety for future exercises. Documentation ensures accountability." A colonel cleared his throat, flipping through a binder of logs. "General, the audit's uncovering gaps. Prep crew rotations from last quarter, civilian contractors with lapsed clearances. If this shoes from a breach, it questions the entire certification chain." Thorne's jaw tightened, his fingers flexing at his sides. The mist thickened, beading on uniforms, the floodlights humming as dusk crept in. Reporters from the base newsletter hovered at the tape line, notebooks out. Word had leaked through the ranks, the story's gravity pulling eyes. One snapped a photo, the flash stark against the gloom. Eleanor's pulse remained steady, trained for scrutiny, but the exposure gnawed. Her act of filing now a public stand, the shoe's small form emblematic of buried oversights. "Accountability," Thorne echoed, his gaze sweeping the assembly. "Or sabotage of efficiency. I've got division commands waiting on metrics. This witch hunt costs time, man-hours, resources." He gestured to the rubble, voice rising just enough to carry. "We clear threats in the field, not chase phantoms on home ground, no witnesses to inefficiency." The phrase hung twisting in the open air, drawing sharper glances from the MPs. The lieutenant jotted a note, his pen scratching audible in the hush. Reed stepped forward, measured. "Sir, with respect, the provost's involvement confirms it's no phantom. If there's a pattern, multiple unreported items, it implicates oversight." Thorne's eyes narrowed on Elena, then Rex, who met his stare unflinching, a low rumble vibrating in his chest before she quieted him with a touch. The general exhaled, turning to his aide. "Escalate to JAG, full investigation, but mark this, delays like these erode readiness." He strode to his vehicle, the door slamming with finality, engine growling as it pulled away. The group dispersed under the lieutenant's orders, forensics resuming their grid search. Elena led Rex to a clear sector, kneeling to let him work the edges, his nose questing through the damp debris. Another hit, faint, but there, a scrap of fabric, child-sized, snagged on rebar. She bagged it silently, the plastic crinkling, heart sinking at the implication, not isolated, a trail. Reed approached as the lights dimmed, rain resuming in patters on the awning. "JAG means tribunal potential. Thorne's painting you as the instigator, but the evidence is stacking." His voice was low, the scent of wet wool from his jacket mingling with the earth. "Units watching. Torres and Hale backed your log in prelim statements. Loyalties shifting." Elena nodded, clipping the new find to her vest. Rex sat alert, tail brushing the mud, his presence a bulwark against the scrutiny. The public eye had turned the whisper into a roar, reporters filing dispatches, ranks buzzing with the general's veiled command. No witnesses, now ironic, as the base became one vast observer. Her defiance, once solitary, rippled outward, forcing the institution to confront its seams. That night, in the mess hall, the air thick with steam from trays of stew and cornbread, conversations hummed around her. Soldiers from logistics nodded her way, a staff sergeant murmuring approval. About time someone called the bluff. Elena ate methodically, Rex under the table, his head on her boot. The cost pressed, reassignment loomed, Thorne's influence a shadow over her record. But as the hall emptied, floodlights casting long beams across the emptying quad, resolve settled deeper. The reckoning had begun, conscience demanding reform where orders faltered, and Rex's unerring nose the compass guiding through. The days following the site reinspection blurred into a cadence of formal inquiries. the base's rhythm disrupted by the steady churn of official machinery. Elena reported to the Provost Marshal's office each morning, her uniform pressed to razor edges, Rex at heel, as they navigated the labyrinth of interviews and evidence logs. The air in the squat concrete building carried the faint ozone of printers and the bitter edge of machine oil from the adjacent motor pool. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting unflinching illumination on stacks of folders marked Classified Internal Audit. Captain Reed coordinated from the sidelines, his briefings concise over field radios. "Stick to facts, Vasquez. The chain's testing its own links." Thorne's influence pressed like a low front, his directives filtering through memos that tightened the site's lockdown. Handlers were reassigned to auxiliary duties, perimeter patrols under drizzling skies, the wet slap of boots on patrol routes echoing through the pines. Torres and Hale exchanged nods with Elena during chow lines, their K9s brushing flanks in silent solidarity. Luna's tags jingled as she sat vigilant. Scout's tail swept the air in subtle arcs. Whispers in the barracks grew bolder. The general's "no witnesses" had been overheard by an MP, twisted into a shorthand for the cover-up now unraveling. By week's end, the JAG Tribunal convened in a wood-panelled room off the headquarters annex, its walls lined with regimental flags that hung limp in the recirculated air. The scent of polished oak mingled with the sharp tang of legal pads and coffee dregs from styrofoam cups. Thorne sat at the respondent's table, flanked by his adjutant, his posture unyielding as the panel, 3 colonels and a senior JAG officer, reviewed projections of the audit findings. Elena testified first, her voice measured, recounting Rex's alert step by step. The paw at the crevice, the whine cutting through the sim chatter, the shoe's emergence like a fault line in the protocol. "Sergeant," the presiding colonel asked, his glasses perched low on his nose, "did the general's order directly instruct suppression of evidence?" "Implied, sir," Elena replied, hands clasped behind her back, Rex lying composed at the room's edge. He stated no witnesses left behind in context of the find. I interpreted it as directive to forego documentation, per efficiency metrics. Thorne leaned forward, his gravel tone slicing the quiet. "Misinterpretation, Colonel. Operational tempo requires pragmatism. The site's a training construct. Relics happen." Her log escalated a non-issue into this circus. The panelist flipped through exhibits. The shoe, now catalogued with fiber analysis, confirming off-base origin. The fabric scrap, traced to a 2019 civilian contractor breach during off-hours maintenance. Logs revealed lapsed clearances under Thorne's oversight, a pattern of rushed certifications to meet deployment quotas. The room's clock ticked steadily, the only sound as the JAG officer cross-referenced Article 92 violations, failure to obey lawful orders, but twisted here into obstruction. Reed's testimony followed. Bolstering the chain, "Sir, Vasquez's action aligned with SAR doctrine. Ignoring anomalies risks lives in real ops. The unit's integrity hinges on such vigilance." Handler's statements piled on, Torres detailing Luna's near miss on a similar unreported hazard last cycle, Hale affirming Scout's role in past validations. The tribunal stretched into afternoon, sunlight slanting through blinds in golden bars across the table, dust motes dancing like unspoken truths. As the panel deliberated, the base stirred with anticipation. Reporters from Military Times lingered at the gates, their queries met with no comment stoicism from the gate guards. In the kennels, Elena brushed Rex's coat under the harsh glow of hanging bulbs, the straw rustling underfoot, his steady breathing a counterpoint to her racing thoughts. The cost loomed, demotion, transfer, but the evidence had witnesses now, the system itself, compelled to self-examine. The verdict came at dusk, announced in a terse communiqué over the base intercom, its tone formal as a dress parade. Thorne faced reprimand, formal censure for procedural lapses, mandatory retraining in oversight protocols. No court-martial, but a dent in his starched facade. Efficiency metrics revised, with emphasis on thorough sweeps. The site's certification revoked pending full forensics. Contractors audited base-wide. Elena's log, once a solitary defiance, became case study material for K9 handler academies. Her name redacted, but the act etched in training manuals. In the weeks that followed, reform rippled outward. Reed spearheaded a unit-wide protocol update, sessions held in the tactical tent where rain pattered on canvas like Morse code. Handlers gathered around folding tables, maps unrolled, discussing anomaly reporting chains with the precision of mission briefs. Loyalty isn't blind, Reed emphasized, his marker underscoring flowcharts. It's the nose that finds the threat before it bites. Elena mentored the juniors, Torres' new partner, a fresh corporal with a fidgety Malinois, demonstrating Rex's signals in the obedience yard, the grass springy underfoot, the dog's alerts crisp against the morning chill. Thorne transferred to a desk role in D.C., his departure marked by a subdued change of command ceremony. Salutes exchanged under overcast skies, the wind carrying the faint whine of idling engines. He nodded to Elena as he passed, a curt acknowledgement, no apology, but the fracture mended in institutional silence. Her record cleared, promotion whispers circulated. She became a quiet symbol, the sergeant who bent the chain without breaking it. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the pines, Elena walked Rex along the perimeter trail, the air alive with cricket hum and the earthy scent of cooling soil. The mock village site, now dismantled, lay as open field, stakes pulled, rubble hauled away in orderly convoys. Rex trotted ahead, nose questing the breeze, pausing to mark a familiar post. She knelt, running her hand along his flank. The bond, unspoken yet profound, a loyalty that transcended ranks, mirroring the quiet reforms she'd sparked. In the ranks, the lesson lingered. Duty sharpened by conscience, orders tested against evidence. Elena's stand had transformed the system, one unearthed truth at a time, proving that even in rigid hierarchies, a single alert could unearth justice from the rubble. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching. The case of the general said no witnesses left. Then the dog found a child's shoe in the rubble. See you in the next one. In the end, true discipline lay not in unyielding obedience, but in the courage to unearth what the shadows concealed, forging legacies from the quiet acts of integrity.